All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Inside In Tennis Podcast. Mitch Michals here on the Believe Network. We've got a lot of great content on the network and on this podcast, and we are moving along to the final stages of 2025 Roland Garros. Joining me now, friend of the show, broadcaster, former player, coach, doing great work in the broadcast space, including her Diary of a Professional Tennis Coach podcast and the daily updates from Roland Garros at about 9 o'clock Eastern every day, or 9 o'clock Pacific every day, I should say, have been just remarkable stuff. Candy Reid, welcome back to the show, Candy. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
And you, Mitch, you were on our Roland Garros live show a couple of days ago and did a fantastic job. Get a gold star for that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's so fun, but stuff keeps changing, right? Like I've noticed that too. If you notice with some of the interviews and podcasts, even when you're calling matches, right? You can't linger on anything because there's another day of tennis and a new storyline that just takes everyone's attention.
The good thing is, though, I think you remember these funny things, like Alexander Bublik saying that he'd booked a ticket home, or essentially to the Grand Canyon, didn't he, before he played Jannik Sinner, because he knew he was going to lose in 3 sets. And those stories kind of resonate 3 or 4 days afterwards. And then Coco walking on to court without any rackets, even though that happened now a week ago, it still feels like it's funny and relevant.
Yeah, those are the special ones. Like people you don't realize are funny. Like the social media side of it. Like I didn't know how funny Yuri Lehechka is, and everybody. That's just the new trend of posting when you win one game against Jannik Sinner. And he's got the Instagram post with himself, Bublik. I think Casper's on there, or it's like we did it. We finally did it. Almost had him. That's the best. It's the almost had him with Jannik Sinner.
I think people can get their personalities across because, there's a famous comedy show called Absolutely Fabulous. I don't know if you've heard of it. It was big sort of 20 years ago, but there's a line in there about sports personality of the year, contradiction in terms. Because, sports personalities, a lot of them don't have it because they're so single-minded and, you go and play golf for 8 hours a day and like Nikolai Davydenko play tennis on your wedding day. Can you think of anything other than tennis? Well, now players actually can get their personalities across. For instance, the guy I do the podcast with is Mark Gellard, and he coaches Magda Linette, and we had Magda's cat on our podcast last night. And it's just, she loves cats. And of course, professional tennis players really can't have animals. Some of them do travel with dogs, but cats don't. They stay at home with mum. And so the cat came on, and the cat hasn't quite learned how to use the litter box. So he put his head in the litter box, put his bottom out of it. And then what produced, was on the floor. And it's just good stuff. And it makes these people human beings, which is what they really are.
That's hilarious. Did not know Magdalena was a cat owner, but good to know these fun facts.
I won't tell you her favorite word. It is an animal. It comes across as slightly rude, but it's a very funny story.
Okay. All right. Well, got to listen to your show to find that out. I also didn't know that Davydenko played tennis on his wedding day. It's a fun fact too. Just got to get some work in. Where Roland Garros is right now, we have the final set on the women's side. Semifinals will take place tomorrow on the men's side. So I did want to discuss what we know the final quarterfinal spot since the last time this podcast took place. Starting with this, Candy, Novak Djokovic back into the semifinals. He does have a tall task with Jannik Sinner, which we'll get to later, but he figured out Alexander Zverev yet again, dropped the first set, and then it was pretty smooth sailing from there. It was the story of the match in a lot of ways was the drop shots. He was just peppering and pummeling Zverev with those and finding a way to win big points. It was remarkable stuff, Candy, and I want to know your perspective, why he was able to turn the tide and ultimately figure out the tall German.
Well, I think the weather conditions were relevant. We had Olga Savchuk on the podcast a few days ago. She is a Ukrainian, has worked with Aryna Sabalenka and Karolina Pliskova. But in this point, it's relevant because her husband is Jez Green, and he's the strength and conditioning trainer of Novak. And she stated quite clearly that Zverev really needed it to be warm. He needed the ball to bounce up. The conditions weren't really in his favor. Although, of course, he won the first set. And I think we were starting to think, well, this is going to be Zverev's day. But you're right, Novak turned the tables. He's just lost 7 matches so far this season. And we've spoken about him having a rough 2025, haven't we? The record's still very good. And I just think he works Zverev out slowly but surely. I think he was just too solid. The drop shot, I think, has been the shot of Roland Garros. And sometimes it sort of rears its beautiful head, doesn't it, on the clay court season, but no more perhaps than this season, where we've seen Lois Boisson on the women's side do it so many times against Jessie Pegula. Alexander Bublik, who we mentioned earlier, beats Jack Draper with aid of that beautiful drop shot. Carlos Alcaraz is perhaps the Mac Daddy of that shot, and now Djokovic getting into the act as well. Zverev, to me, sometimes anyway, is too much of a one-trick pony, a little in the mold of Medvedev and Rublev, in that he's not great coming forward. And that is perhaps just a slight weak link of him. His backhand is arguably the best, along with Novak's on the men's side. There's no doubt about that. But if you can exploit him a little bit, get that ball to stay low, and use the drop shot, bring him forward, he's not too comfortable. I just thought it was a masterclass in strategy from Novak. He didn't panic after he lost the first set. Only set he's lost, of course, at Roland Garros this year for Novak. So brilliant all round from a guy who's won many majors, and perhaps one more is coming up.
Yeah, I think he might have missed a many in there, but it's all right. No, I thought the same thing. No panic, even in that last game when he had multiple match points and it was a marathon game. He kept figuring out. He kept coming to the net on the deuce court, and it was just crazy stuff. And I wonder with the drop shot too, if it's return positioning. Candy, as kind of a technician and a student of the game for several eras, it just seemed from the outsider, from my perspective, like it was the natural progression. We saw Nadal Medvedev in that Australian Open, where if players are going to be that far back, and I get why there's benefits there, it's only natural, right, that a drop shot gets introduced more often.
Oh, it makes sense, doesn't it? And I think we weren't seeing it for a few years ago. And now it's come to the fore, because you're right, players are just sitting back, like a Medvedev in particular. I think he's the one that stands out, but Zverev also plays way behind the baseline. That's where he feels most comfortable. He's got quite big swings, doesn't he, Zverev, on both sides, so it takes a little more time, so he's earning time. But then, of course, he's in trouble when the player can execute the drop shot. And obviously, there's a time to do it. But on clay, because it is a slippery surface underneath, you don't get the traction. It's such a good shot if you can disguise it. It's not so much the execution, but the disguise that makes all the difference. And I just think Novak had that down just brilliantly.
Yeah, and I believe it was the third set, right, where it kind of went away fast. And I don't want to put myself in Zverev's head, Candy, but he seemed like he was already mentally checked out going to set 4. I've noticed that a couple times, Tommy Paul Fucsovic, where, and I know there's strategy and you save your energy, but when you punt on sets like that, it could be, it could be detrimental, because it's one set, but you're giving the momentum on a platter to the other player. And I just thought maybe there was a little less resistance than there should have been.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think we've seen Zverev a few times this year, particularly, I think, getting quite frustrated and upset and losing his stuff, essentially, getting upset with his team, including his brother and his dad are in there, and just letting his emotions kind of hang out. And I think he's just been so close, hasn't he, before, most notably at the US Open, where he lost, of course, the Dominic Thiem. And he's had his chances, then he got really badly injured against Rafa Nadal at Roland Garros a few years ago, and that horrible ankle injury, which he's come back so strongly from. He is perhaps the guy that spends most time on court on the ATP side, the guy that puts the most effort into practice, and he's so diligent. I was at the Australian Open using the gym, and he was in there with his team. I remember just at the Australian Open, our radio booth is on Rod Laver Arena, and he, in between the day and the night session, he came out and practiced his second serve. He just puts everything into it, and I think sometimes that's actually not the greatest thing, like we heard from Bjorn Fratangelo, coach and husband, of course, of Maddie Keys at this year's Australian Open. Sometimes on your day off, you just need to stay away from the court. Like, just have a break, have a minute to yourself, do something different, stop thinking about it. And I think Zverev sometimes gets a little bit into his own head. And I believe that he thinks his time is running out, because now we've got this unbelievable next generation of Sinner, Alcaraz, perhaps Draper, Musetti's adding into that now, that maybe Zverev's chance has come and gone. And that must be enormous frustration for him.
Certainly tough. Djokovic still around, 38 years old, 51 major semifinals. That's just a tough number to wrap anyone's head around, let alone myself. So the other men's semifinal, or the quarterfinal match to finish up on that Tuesday, was Musetti defeating Tiafoe. A lot happened in that match, obviously, a lot to talk about. But on the tennis front, Musetti's clay season, Candy, has just been remarkable. And I know it's overshadowed by Alcaraz and Sinner's comeback and what Djokovic is doing. But when TNT Turner ran that graphic here in the States of players that have made the semifinals or better of all the big clay events, there wasn't many names on that list. You had Rafa, you had Djokovic, you had Murray. But for Musetti to do this, every single big clay event, he's showing up.
It's incredible. I'm quite good friends with his coach, Simona Tartarini, and I was speaking to him in the off season, and Musetti actually had a virus, and he had some arm problems. So they've tweaked his serve, which is why he's got that very abbreviated backswing on his serve. So the off season was not ideal in any way, shape, or form. I think Lorenzo was in bed for about 10 days with this virus. But he's come back really strongly. The beginning of the season, he started in Hong Kong, actually commentated on that tournament. And he was a little bit shaky, pulled out injured at the end. But yeah, in the clay season, his game has just come strength after strength. And I've been speaking with a good friend of mine at Hawkeye, and he showed me some of the graphics. And so I actually have some numbers here to back up what I'm saying. But the most remarkable number is that Musetti, on his second serve, he's getting on his forehand side. Last year, in 2024, he got onto it 35% of the time. So that's behind his second serve on clay. He's getting a forehand. This year, 61% on his forehand. That's a massive rise.
It is. And trying to ask the right questions to an expert here. What you're saying is we see what his forehand can do. How is he able to dictate? How is he able to, what's been the difference from those percentage changes where on second serves, he's getting what he wants essentially?
Yeah. Well, essentially, so what we know about professional tennis is that players have bigger forehands. That's where the winners come from. Also, probably the unforced errors. The backhand, we know that one-handed beautiful backhand of Musetti is so solid, it's gorgeous. But the winners from Musetti are going to come off the forehand. So after his serve, the players want to hit a forehand. Even Novak, even the guy that has arguably the best backhand that's ever lived. Zverev is probably the one exception that he's happy to hit a backhand. But talking about Musetti, so that indicates to me that the second serve has got a lot better in that he is able to put the second serve where the opponent is then going to give him a ball either down the middle or to his forehand where he can absolutely unleash on it. And then, so the other thing I'll bring up is I've seen graphics now of where Musetti's landing his serves. And both on the forehand and the second serve, first and second, I should say, he's been going to opponents' forehands almost as much as he's been going into the backhand. And I think that's where some of the players get a little unstuck. And I certainly, when I played, not to anywhere like this level, but I remember most of my second serves were going to my opponent's backhand, and it just gets too predictable. And I think you're seeing at the top of the game now, the Sinners, the Alcarazes, the Novaks, and Musetti, they're starting to change that, where actually they're then surprising their opponents by going into the forehand and then getting the shot they want. So maybe Alcaraz, if Musetti serves from the deuce court to the Alcaraz forehand, the forehand is going to come back cross court, which is the safer shot for a returner. Then Musetti gets what he wants, which is his own forehand. But it's just that number is just so striking because it's massive. From 35% last year to 61% on the clay this year. I mean, that is a massive rise. You'd expect maybe a few percentage points, but not over 20, not in that regard.
Very, very impressive. Musetti moves on, but I did want to ask the question that everyone's talking about. Do you think a default would have been necessary in that situation? Or asking it a different way, was it a slam dunk decision? Is there a gray area? Is there some reason and some leash that the umpire has in any situation where, for those that didn't see it, a ball that Musetti got handed to him or sent to him, essentially he kicked, it hit a linesperson, she was okay, and they just moved on and kept playing. We've seen players kicked out for variations of that, but thoughts on the situation and what the umpire can and maybe should have done?
Well, they need to use their common sense, which I believe happened, and I think it was absolutely the right call. I think if he had been taken out of that match, well, the fans would have gone nuts. The TV audience would have been, what has just happened here? That was not a red card situation to me at all. And I think common sense here is where we need to play it. I don't know if you remember the Mio Kato incident at, Roland Garros a few years ago, wasn't it? The doubles, where she accidentally hit the ball. She was meaning the ball person to catch the ball. The ball person didn't see it and it hit her. And then the team was disqualified. It was just bonkers. Absolutely so terrible. And all the prize money, all the points went for Mia Kato. And you just felt, so bad. It was so unnecessary. I think the umpire should have given her a warning, say, please don't do that again. If you do, then we're going to have words. But I think the situation was handled brilliantly. There has to be a grey area. Now, we're going back to the Novak incident, aren't we, where he did get DQ'd. And that was a moment of anger where he actually hit the ball pretty hard and could have hurt somebody. The linesperson, I believe, got it in the neck. And of course, Novak fans are going to go, well, it needs to be black and white. If you hit the person, you're out. If you don't. But I don't agree with that at all. I think in life, we have to have common sense. And I think it was used beautifully in the Musetti incident.
Yeah. And just to kind of echo, I didn't think a DQ was necessary. I also, could push back on some of the DQs in the past. What I don't like is when we say, yeah, it has to be black and white. And also, not all rulings are the same. Like if you want to put it into other sports perspectives, referees are going to call things differently. You can say Musetti maybe got a break, and I would agree he deserved to get a break because I wouldn't have kicked him out either. But this idea that it's going to be, unless you put it in the rule book, right? Unless you put it in the rule book that automatically no questions asked, there is going to be judgment, enacted. And that's also human nature. And I agree. I think the last thing you wanted was a match to end in a situation like that. So I'm glad. I'm glad it's
let's use common sense, and it could be even an incident where the umpire says, okay, well, that's a point deduction because you've done that. I'm all right with that. A game deduction, whatever it needs to be. But let's give the umpires a chance here to just conduct it in a common sense method, and let's go with that. It's not good for tennis if people are getting disqualified for things like that.
No, certainly not. Musetti, though, he moves on, and we have our semifinal set on the men's side. More with Candy Reid here on the Inside in Tennis podcast. We're going to look at the women's Roland Garros. The final is set, and semifinals today were interesting. Starting with the headliner, the first match, Sabalenka defeats Iga Swiatek. She wins in 3 sets. First sets were competitive and tight. Third set was absolutely not a bagel by Sabalenka. And as far as 6-0 sets go, it wasn't even as close as the 6-0 scoreline. It was all Aryna. She hit the reset button, Candy. And that's a story for me. Twice in this match, right? First set, going into a tiebreaker when she was up big and kind of squandered that lead, wins that. And then after losing the second set, Aryna Sabalenka hits the reset button, gets her mind and game right. That is absolutely not something that would have happened years ago. That's just a testament to her growth. And she proves it again. She's the undisputed best in the world.
She is. She absolutely deserves it. She's a delight, isn't she, to watch? She's fun to watch. She loves the crowd. She loves the moment. Like Coco Gauff, she is an unbelievable competitor. I was backing Sabalenka. I just think she's got a little bit too much power for Iga Swiatek. The experts, the coaches, are saying that the Roland Garros clay courts are relatively fast for clay courts, and so that obviously suits Sabalenka. Swiatek really needed to be humid and slow and try and bother Sabalenka with that. It was an extraordinary match. I think for the first 2 sets, we got exactly what we were expecting, which was a really tight semi-final encounter. Of course, Swiatek coming in, having won her last 26 matches at Roland Garros, which is just crazy. 3 titles in a row. She was going for number 5, wasn't she? But didn't get it done. Sabalenka was extraordinary in the last set, served so beautifully. Didn't hit an unforced error either in that final set. So now 41-6 for Sabalenka in the season. It's been a brilliant season. Didn't, of course, get the Australian Open title, but she's looking for her first at Roland Garros. And, well, in my opinion, she's now the heavy favourite. Not the heavy favourite, but certainly the favourite to do so. But great match, I thought, from Sabalenka. And you're right, she's not panicking. She just looks so cool. It's like, let's go again if something doesn't work out well. And that's the mark of a champion.
She can express herself emotionally still, and it doesn't, it doesn't bleed into other areas of her game.
Yeah.
There was a clip of her yelling at her coach when things weren't going well in the first set. I'm paraphrasing and taking words out, but basically saying, like, why are you just sitting there? Why are you even just sitting there? But, snaps out of it and makes the shots he needs to. It was good to see Iga back, in the first 2 sets, back to playing close to her peak clay court tennis, moving well, frustrating Sabalenka. It's funny, right? You're a victim of success. Federer said as much when he lost to Djokovic in Australia way back in 2008, right? I've created a monster. So Iga, if it wasn't a title, given her past, that people are going to look at this as maybe a mini failure. But I don't, Candy, in a weird way. She was coming in with very little momentum. She lost to the best player in the world in 3 sets. I think it's a respectable result and something maybe she can build on.
Yeah, I think we saw much better play, didn't we, from Iga Swiatek? The panic had sort of gone out of her eyes, which we've seen so much in 2025. Still hasn't won a title. It's extraordinary, isn't it? And had some good wins. Shramkova, Raducanu, Christian, Rybakina. That was an exceptional win because Rybakina had won Strasbourg and is getting back to her best as well. Swiatek had very few problems with Svitolina 1 and 5. But Sabalenka just proving a match too much. Perhaps Iga had worn herself out a little bit. And there must be some panic a little bit behind the scenes from Swiatek. We didn't see it, as I said, quite so much in this tournament. But just the fact that she's become world number 5. We're now speaking about others rather than her winning clay court tournaments, which in the last couple of years just hasn't happened. She's no longer the invincible one, is she? The queen of clay. Not yet, anyway. I do worry for Wim Fissette, her coach. I wonder how long he's going to be sticking around given what has happened, because we know that Iga doesn't particularly like the grass. She doesn't really put a huge amount of effort into it. I don't think she played she didn't play any grass court matches apart from Wimbledon last year. She pulled out of Berlin, which was going to be her warm-up. So that part of the season isn't particularly interesting to her. So she's going to have to rebuild, you suspect, on the hard courts and at the US Open, where, of course, she can win. But yes, it's interesting to see and what's going to happen to Swiatek now, 24 years of age, has been the undisputed world number 1, but she's lost that title. So now I suppose the pressure is off her back, maybe, and she can go in a little bit freer. But I wonder if there's going to be a coaching change. There might be.
You made me think of something there, right? Because Iga became number 1 in the world right on the heels of Ash Barty retiring.
Yes.
She earned it, of course, but there was no real chase. There was no pressure. Sabalenka hunted Iga down. Iga was on top. She worked relentlessly. The target was squarely on Iga's back. So on one side, I'm thinking, man, does Iga have enough to get back to number 1 now that she knows what it takes to have been there and stay there? But on the other side, it might be a little refreshing that she doesn't have all this pressure and expectations on her. So it could go either way.
And I think she's the kind of personality that doesn't particularly like the limelight. I mean, we know that she's an unbelievable competitor, but I don't think she's like the Sabalenkas and perhaps slightly less in Coco Gauff, that she likes the media attention. And of course, as you're world number 1, you have to really like it in a way. You're sort of forced into that position. But we see Iga at press conferences with the hat on downwards and not really wanting to get involved. And so perhaps this actually will help her, the fact that she's dropped back a little bit. Other people are being talked about more than she is. And now she becomes back into the hunter rather than the hunted. And if she's going to stay around for another 10 years, which I suspect she will, maybe, she'll actually look back at this as a blessing in disguise.
I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun to see the new rivalries develop and see the dynamics change. But full marks to Sabalenka just taking control. And the finalist she'll meet is Coco Gauff, a rematch of that interesting Madrid final that Sabalenka won. Gauff ends the fairy tale of Lois Boisson, the French wild card selection, who is now the French new number 1. It was just a dream run for her. But it was not a dream match today where she only won 3 games. It was a reality check in a lot of ways. Coco Gauff, who had not really been playing her best, had been fighting her best, but you saw it today, right, Candy? Like Coco is on. There's a level that she can hit that very few, if anyone, can get to. And Boisson was never comfortable in this match, and the crowd can never really get into it.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a few things that Coco said at the end. She knew what she was going up for, playing the only French player left in the singles. Boisson arguably got through largely with help of the fans over Mira Andreeva, who slightly crumbled under the pressure. It's horrible. I played US college tennis in the United States for Tennessee, and I remember playing LSU in Florida where the fans got sort of in your face, and I didn't like it at all. And that was on a much, much smaller scale.
It was tough. It was tough to watch that last service game for Andreeva, where she served every ball in like 10 seconds and got broken love. It was like, I want to go home. And
she just wanted out.
Tough.
But she's 18 and Coco Gauff is 21, and she's been, even those, 3 years is relatively a short time, but Coco's been around a lot more, hasn't she? She's faced this. And she had a good quote in that she said, I prepared myself. And so every time the crowd essentially shouted for her opponent, she put her name in that. And I just like the fact that Coco's finding solutions. We heard, I think last year, she said that she's spoken with her younger brother, who's a very good baseball player. And they spoke about, rather than thinking of majors in 7 matches and best of 3, she's almost thinking of them as 8 matches and best of 5. So then in that final run-up, the final game essentially of the match, for her is not the final game. There's more to play. So you don't kind of build it up as this is all or nothing. I've got to win this game and then I'm over the line. And I just think she's finding ways mentally to cope with these situations. She just got off to such a blistering start. And I think that 3-love beginning just took all the wind out of Boisson, who just ran out of energy. A little like João Fonseca, I thought, in the third round of the ATP side.
Right.
He beat Hubie Hurkacz in the first round and then just steadily just lost energy. And against Jack Draper, he was just sort of, he was an 18-year-old, just like Mira Andreeva, just showing a bit of their age and inexperience. And Boisson, I think that happened to her today.
It's crazy, right? The run that you go on when you're playing with house money, you almost feel like you can't lose. And today it was a different story. Every match is different. That's the beauty of this sport. But I think with Gauff, another major final, her second Roland Garros final.
Yes.
She's been right at the top of the game. Really only has 1 or 2 roadblocks. It's cool to see her progression. And I've always said this too, like for all of her weaknesses, I think it's one thing to not highlight her strengths enough, but I think her ability to fight has kept her in it, because there are a lot of players that would lose when they're having an off day. She finds a way to win a lot of matches she shouldn't. I think that's a great compliment.
Yeah, and we've spoken, I think you were on the pod the other day where we were talking about the fact that Coco hasn't played her best, and you mentioned it right at the beginning of this interview. But she was still winning, and that is the mark of a great champion. It was a weird match she played, wasn't it, with Madison Keys? I'm just looking at the numbers: 14 double faults, 101 unforced errors between them. Coco hit 41, but she still won the match, and she's still going strong. And that just speaks of her unbelievable mental mindset, that she's able to put those away and get on with it. We've seen a couple of times in the past, particularly I thought at last year's Wimbledon where she lost to Navarro, she just looked really, really shaken. And she was sort of gesturing at Brad Gilbert, he was coaching at the time. What am I going to do? I don't know. I don't have the answers. And that was shocking to me to see her like that, because usually she's so composed regardless of what's happening. And she's gone back to that now. She just looks safe and secure. If the forehand breaks down, next point. If she hits a double fault, don't worry, I'll get the next one in. And her wheels are just ridiculous. And I think I've said this to you before, Mitch. I really believe that she's the most important player on the WTA Tour. Her success is imperative because, of course, there's a huge US market. Everyone knows Coco Gauff. She sort of transcends tennis, doesn't she? She's one of those players that has a voice everywhere. Everybody knows who Coco Gauff is in the world.
She does. She is a bona fide star. I think she was the top earning female athlete last year. I mean, Naomi Osaka was up there too, but Coco on court especially. Yep. So got a great final. And you mentioned it, right? Sabalenka is, I think, a 2-1 favorite or so. So it's a prohibitive favorite, but not as lopsided as some of the men's matches we're going to talk to wrap up. But I think conventional thought, Candy thinks that if Sabalenka plays her best game, she wins the match. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. It's 1 versus 2. We couldn't really have a better final if you're a neutral. This is just magnificent. I'm just looking at that head-to-head, Mitch. 5-5. They have met on clay this year, as you said, the Madrid final. 3-6 win for Sabalenka. I think Sabalenka's got a little more than Coco. If she can go big into that forehand, that's probably going to be the difference. Sabalenka can cope with the Coco serve. She's got her own massive serve. She's developed her game, hasn't she, Sabalenka, into not just being an aggressive baseliner, but she also has the drop shot. She can slice. She has apparently a practice partner, Anton, who's now become sort of co-coach as well, that can literally impersonate any other opponent. So he's going to be doing his best Coco Gauff impression over the next couple of days to get her ready. She's got an amazing team around her. They just seem like such a good family, even though, as you said, she was getting a bit upset today. But the team can take it. You know, they understand the pressure she's under. They keep it fun. They keep it light. They're getting the best out of her. Sabalenka, I agree, is the favourite. And I think if I had to put money on this one, this is the way I'd go.
Yeah, I've also noticed too, in terms of the Coco success rates, or maybe not even wins because she finds a way to win, but it ties into the serve. Eliminate those double faults. Don't give your opponent, even some of the matches she won where there'd be a blowout set and then a tight set where the serve kind of went away from her. Yeah, we saw Sabalenka today just tee off on Iga's second serve when she got clean looks at it. So Coco's got to serve well. See if Sabalenka can get a little rattled in there. There will be openings for her to get back because as great as Sabalenka is, there's been some loose games in there. So I'm expecting a competitive final, and yeah, this is a dream final. This is what
Yeah.
you know, 1 and 2 sometimes isn't as entertaining or exciting. I think this is what we all wanted.
And it's going to be competitive because say if it was Sabalenka Boisson, I think we would see very one-sided only because of handling the situation.
Yeah.
But both these players are major champions. Coco Gauff has won a US Open singles. She's also won a Roland Garros doubles title with Katerina
Yes.
Siniakova. So she is a champion here in Paris. And I think it's going to be an unbelievably competitive match. I think both players are going to go at it like heavyweight punchers. I cannot wait. I think it's most likely going to go to 3 sets. It could be a close 2-setter, but I suspect it's going to go all the way and the fans are going to go nuts. And I just hope that, this match is given the credit it deserves because it's going to be a humdinger.
So we got the men's semifinal matches to preview before we get going here on the Inside In Tennis podcast. Mitch Michals with Candy Reid. You got Alcaraz taking on Musetti. Musetti is going to come into this matchup feeling good about his clay game, but also knowing the guy on the other side of the net is the defending champion and has handed him some tough losses this year. Some different circumstances on them. We know this is best of 5, which changes the ball game, but Alcaraz is a heavy favorite, and if you watched any of him play this tournament, you understand why, because he's got it all clicking, he's confident, he's apologizing to the crowd for matches that don't go long enough. It's going to be tough for Musetti, and I just wonder if there is an opening in any scenario where Musetti makes this competitive, what is it, Candy? Because we all know what Alcaraz brings to this game.
This is going to be tough, isn't it? I mean, really, you got to see Musetti's got to play sort of 95%. I was speaking to someone earlier about Alcaraz, and they said the only thing is Alcaraz sometimes throws in a bad match, and he hasn't done that so far in Roland Garros. So perhaps semi-final time. I mean, that's the one thread that Musetti can kind of hold on to. And just looking at Alcaraz's results, Zeppieri beaten in 3, Marijan, who's caused some problems in the past, beaten 4.
He'll throw in sets where there's a dip, and it is best of 5 though, and he's been able to get back on track. I think it's the red line approach, right? Because we saw it with Sinner with some of the players. You almost have to go bigger than you're used to, and how long can that actually work is the counter to it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think speaking to Brian Shelton the other day, Ben Shelton had a point to set up set point in the first set and didn't take it like he did against Jannik Sinner. Shelton didn't take it at the Australian Open. And Brian said, against these top guys, you've got to take that first set. You've got to put them on the back foot, because once they get that first set, then they relax and actually their play gets better. And that's what Shelton wasn't able to do. He was so close. But getting close against these guys is something. Getting over the line is completely another challenge. And obviously, Tommy Paul didn't even get close. I mean, that was an absolute whitewash. Love 1 and 4. I was actually speaking to Shelton at the time that match was going on, Brian Shelton, having Ben just lost to Alcaraz a couple of days before. So Ben is the one that's pushed Alcaraz the most. They were apparently just chatting in the locker room. They were sitting next to each other in the locker room, Shelton and Alcaraz, right before the match went on, having a chat about Champions League football and their outfits. I mean, Alcaraz, I love him. He's so brilliant, isn't he? That he's so relaxed. Most players are nervous as hell before they step on court. And these guys are having a little chin wag. I'm surprised they didn't get out the coffees and, bring out a biscuit and, enjoy the, bring out the ladies and have a real conversation about life and everything about it. But I think he just brings an enormous amount of joy to tennis, Alcaraz, with that wonderful smile of his. Nobody dislikes him. Everybody loves him. He's got a great family around him, a great team. He enjoys what he does. He's got the exquisite drop shot. Yeah, I think Musetti's just going to have to play top of his ability tomorrow and then hope that Alcaraz is not at the top of his game. And I think that first set is going to be absolutely vital.
Yeah, he's entering the legendary status of the sport. And what we always said about the big 3, got to take the first set to even have a breath of a chance. So be tough for Musetti. The other semifinal, Novak Djokovic, Jannik Sinner. They're meeting in a major match for the first time since that Australian Open 2 years ago, before Sinner beat him and then won his first major. I can't remember a time. This is as big of an underdog as Novak has been by odds makers, by public perception, and you understand why, because Sinner is just been a killer out there. Do you see it as lopsided as the public gets? Do you think Sinner probably turns it on, or do you think Novak is going to make this a very interesting match?
I think it's going to be an interesting match. I would be shocked if Novak doesn't get at least one set. Just looking through Sinner's results so far, he lost 12 games to Artur Rindignesh. That was in the first round. He hasn't lost anywhere near that to anybody else. Gasquet got 7 games. Lehechka got 3. Rublev got 8. Bublik, who was hilarious after that match and before it, in fact, got 6. So Sinner's just, pulling people apart. And we thought this might happen, didn't we, given that he had that 3-month doping enforced ban. So he is fresh as a daisy. I think he's been working very, very hard. I was actually at Monte Carlo at the 1000 earlier this year, and Darren Cahill was working out in the same gym as I was. Darren Cahill, by the way, works out like a man possessed. I think I was in there for an hour, and he was in there for longer than I was, and he'd never stop. But they were training in Monte Carlo because I saw Vaganossi as well. I think just Sinner was just ripping through. He did so much work. He was training with Rune. He was training with so many other players. And so now he is fresh. He didn't lose his number 1 ranking, even though he was out for 3 months. And where everyone else is slightly flailing, we heard things, didn't we, from Casper Ruud and Alex de Minaur saying they were tired. Jannik Sinner's like, well, let's go again because I'm feeling great. He's won the Australian Open. He's destroyed his opponents here at Roland Garros. It's about how many games you can win as opposed to taking a set or even beating him.
Yeah.
But Novak, of course, won't be intimidated. He will believe in himself more than anybody else. And I expect it to be competitive, but I don't expect Novak to win.
Yeah, there's a lot you said there I agree with. I'm not going to count out Djokovic, the heart of a champion, the fact that he's going to have something up his sleeve. He's going to have some sort of strategy he's going to try. That said, the other side of that coin, Candy, is Jannik's no longer afraid of Novak. Like that, those days are done too. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think a set, maybe a tight 4, maybe even 5, but to ask Novak on the heels of a match against Zverev that was 4 and on the physical side, to follow that up with Sinner and a win over Sinner, I don't think that's reasonable. And that would set up Alcaraz and Sinner in their first major final, which the odds are on that favor, and that would be another dream for tennis and another opportunity for these two guys to put on a show in the grandest stage in Paris.
And they really like each other. I think, gosh, it's hard to pick a winner there because we know that Alcaraz has got the better over Jannik Sinner quite a few times. I was in Beijing at the end of last year, and they played that extraordinary final, a match tiebreak to decide it. It went the way of Alcaraz. They're just so evenly matched. Different games, of course, different game styles, just wonderful specimens, great friends, incredible. 8-5 to Alcaraz in the head-to-head.
He's got the win streak
in all competitions.
Yeah.
Played in Rome already. Alcaraz is the only one to beat Sinner this year. It would be terrifically exciting if we get that final. I just think for the neutrals again, like Sabalenka Gauff, it's a dream for all the broadcasters, everyone watching, all the commentary teams, everyone doing podcasts to get Sinner versus Alcaraz for the Roland Garros title this year would be superb. And I think it will probably happen. Having said that, I did pick Mira Andreeva to win the WTA side of things, so you can't get everyone right. But I did pick Sinner at the beginning. Did you go with Sinner or did you go with Alcaraz?
Alcaraz on clay. And the only questions I had, and they might not be merited, and they only might show up in the final, is best of 5 Sinner's fitness. Is he ready for the full 5, which he might surely need against Alcaraz, which the beauty of his game is he can just beat everybody, maybe even Djokovic quicker. But best of 5, I know he's not coming back from an injury, but there's a stamina and match toughness. And I don't know. I think if this was hard court, we're obviously forecasting around, but on hard courts, I'm pretty much always going to lean Sinner. On clay, I'm not quite there. But on grass, if they were to meet at Wimbledon, I know Alcaraz has won 2 titles. I actually think Sinner can close the gap a little better. But we're all just in for a treat if they face each other in a major final, probably the first of many, I'd say.
So they met in Umag in the final in 22 on clay. Sinner won that one. Met in Beijing. We were talking about that one earlier. Alcaraz 7-6 in the third. And they met in Rome in the final, and that one went to Alcaraz. So, yeah, I mean, it's so difficult to pick. But I just think because of that 3-month off, that is why I think Sinner will win. And I think Sinner is going to dominate 2025 on the ATP side because, again, he's starting essentially fresh. He's coming in brand new, baby.
That would be 2 out of 4. The Grand Slam would be alive. So
because it's not going to happen on the women's side because Madison Keys has been beaten.
It won't.
So Sinner's the only one that can do it in 2025.
We'll see what happens. It's going to be exciting either way. Candy Reid, always a blast to have you on the Inside in Tennis podcast. What else can we expect from you? You got the Diary of the Professional Tennis Coach podcast, but still coverage every week, right? Every night, right? Of the rest of Roland Garros.
We're doing every night. Roland Garros live. Usually get at least 2 guests, of which thank you for being one. We're speaking all about the matches that have been played. We're getting people that really know their stuff. Who either know the players, know the situation, have been to the press conferences, and then we look ahead to the next match. We talk about all the funny incidents, and I've been really enjoying doing it. It's sometimes a little tricky to get the time in, but it's been working out. So we'll go through till Sunday's final, and then I start on Bosch on Monday on the grass. So straight to it. I'm doing women's and men's at Bosch.
Yeah. People that know their stuff. I guess. I don't know how I fit into the expert guest.
No, you know everything.
I appreciate that a ton.
Right now, we ace it.
I appreciate that a ton, Candy. It's always a pleasure to talk tennis with you. One of the best broadcasters in the game. I sincerely mean that. And we'll support your stuff, your podcast, your Roland Garros live show, and catch you on the air calling matches all around the world. Candy Reid, this was a blast. Thanks for coming on the Inside in Tennis podcast.
Thanks, Mitch. You know I will come in at heartbeat if you ask. Thanks so much.
That was Candy Reid. This was the Inside in Tennis podcast. A reminder, we're on all your platforms: Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon Music, you name it. Just search Inside in Tennis podcast. Subscribe. Leave a nice rating and a review if you would be so kind. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, at Mitch Michals. We got YouTube shorts. We got full video episodes. A lot of good stuff there. For Candy Reid, I'm Mitch Michals. This was the Inside in Tennis podcast. We'll talk to you next week, recapping Roland Garros. Enjoy the tennis. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon.